Okay, I'm recording this, so I have the one from last week to upload, and then we'll do the same with this one and notes too. All right, let's put that away. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for everyone who is here. There's a few of us here. And until Dan gets here, he said he'd be here about 10 after. I'm just going to go over some of the documents that you're going to need for submitting a contract. And when you go to create a transaction loop in .loop and you create it as a buyer's agent, you're going to go into templates when you've created your loop, and you're going to select buyer's package, and then all of these documents will come up. And so I'm going to look at the checklist. So the checklist is your rubric for everything you're going to need for the file. It's really important that you submit this. So I know some of you are pros at it, but every once in a while I get a file submitted and they don't do this. I'm not sure why. They don't do it, but anyway. So these are some of the important things that you're going to need. Obviously, we're going to need the buyer's name and phone number and their email address. So if we have to contact them about something, I will have that. And then this is everything that should get submitted when you submit your file via .loop. And it's really important that you submit the file. And there's a button when you're in your loop, you're going to see submit. And then you're going to choose either listing package or buyer's package when you're submitting it. You just click the folder and you can do that. And then it will let me know that you have an executed contract to submit. Remember, we only submit executed contracts. So that means listing contracts or a agreement of sale. We don't review files that you're working on and when you're going to make an offer unless you ask us to do that. So the only way that I know, and because there are thousands of files in .loop, there's no way for me to know if you've submitted an agreement of sale that needs to be put into our pipeline to get it processed. So the first document that I'm going to look at here is the buyer's agency checkoff list. So you always should include the pre-approval letter or proof of funds if it's cash deal. The executed agreement of sale with everything signed. And the first page you want to completely have filled out. Remember last week Dan went over that. A copy of the deposit check. It's really important that we have a copy of that. So if your buyer is going to submit that directly to the listing agent or to the title company, if title is going to hold escrow, it's really important that you get a copy of that. So just ask your buyer to take a copy with their phone. Otherwise, we don't have a copy. A lot of times the lender then will ask for that, and the buyer might not have taken a picture of it, and then we have to get something from the listing agent. So it just cuts out a lot of work if we get that right away. The seller's disclosure, which must be signed by the buyer and seller. The lead-based paint disclosure if the house was built prior to 1978. Deposit money notice, so we know who's holding the deposit funds. The cooperating broker compensation, and Dan's going to talk about that, I believe, today a little bit for when you're doing your buyer's agency contract. And then the Social Security authorization form. We need that because when title does their research, we're going to need their Social Security number and their date of birth. They fill it out here. It stays in .loop, and I will call the title company with that information. If your buyer doesn't want to complete that because they're concerned about privacy, then we'll just give them the title company that they're working with. If it's MBA, it'll be MBA. We'll send it to them, and they can call directly, and then we're not involved. The next three, this line here, you're going to need all three of those documents. The consumer notice, which is required by the state of Pennsylvania. The Bright MLS disclosure notice, which you are supposed to do before you show them any houses in there. And it's this, a lot of buyer's agents don't think they need to fill it out because it looks like it's only for the seller, but the buyer has to fill out the first part and they just initial it. And it just explains how they're getting compensated. And that came out of that lawsuit over a year ago. And then a copy of the Bright MLS public record. So we have all the important information. And then you're going to complete the Liberty Bell disclosure forms, that one which is mold, radon, and home inspection. And then also for your protection, get a home inspection. So they're the basic forms that we're going to need. And if you could submit them when you submit your documentation with the agreement of sale, that would be great. If there's something that you don't have because the buyer didn't get it back to you, then you can just, in the notes section down below here, you can just let me know that. And then other information that we're going to know is, you know, are you doing title with Liberty Bell or are you using another title company? And you're going to, if it's another title company, meaning are you going to use MBA, is the company that Liberty Bell usually uses. If so, then you're going to click, you know, check yes. If it's no, then you're going to fill in the information for that title company. In the notes section, you want to let me know if you're going to order it. Who's Dan now? Hey, Dan. I just, here, I'll text it to you. Okay. Oh, yeah, it should be in the link. I'll email it to you right now. Yep. It's important that you fill that out and let me know if you're going to personally order the title, if it's another title company. If we're using MBA, then I'll do it. Then if the lender's name, you're going to fill that in if it's a mortgage, and then the listing agent, their information. And then the next section down below is going to show us when the deposits are due, when the inspection is due, and then any other commitment dates. So it's really important that you fill all that out. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll do a whole package on dot loop and how to submit anything. Anybody have any questions? Are you still there?
If an LLC is doing a purchase in the property, do you need the EIN number set of Social Security?
Yes, and you'll need your LLC's incorporation documents. So you'll need their formation stuff. That's really important. And the title will require that. So usually then we don't have to send it because it'll be on all their documentation.
Thanks.
Dan, can you take over sharing the screen or do I have to give it back to you?
I don't know. I'm trying to access it. Hold on. Can you hear me?
All right. You're on. I'm going to hit stop sharing and then you should be able to share.
Okay. All right, so I'm sorry I'm late, everybody. We're going to start the training for the buyer agency contract. So as you all know, there were some changes because of litigation last year in the real estate industry. And one of the major changes is the compensation. How the compensation is shared, how we get paid, you know, all that stuff. So I'm just trying to open. I'm having a problem here opening. All right.
It's the third button on the bottom row from the left. It's
No, I'm having a problem opening up dot loop because I want to share.
Oh, dot loop won't open?
I don't know. It's just taking forever.
Do you want me to share my screen and then you can, or no, that won't work for you.
I got it.
Stop it. Stop it. Let's get some water. Come on.
So the biggest change is it has to do with the compensation, and the way that it worked in the past is for most of the time, buyer agents were compensated by the seller. And it was kind of like unspoken. And when buyer agents and buyers were filling out this buyer agency contract, it was kind of set up that not that the buyer didn't have to worry about paying us because we were going to get paid by the seller as a buyer agent. And what created confusion is we were technically being, in a way, it worked out better because what created confusion is technically we were working for the buyer, but we were getting paid by the seller or the seller's broker. And now that's changed. So technically, now everybody should be able to see my screen now, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I can see it.
Mhm.
All right. So technically, we don't really care about the way things were, or it doesn't really matter what you did in the past or how you did things or how we did things or what was right and wrong. At this point, it's not even a matter of just following the rules that the law. It's a matter of doing what's right. So prior to you going to meet with a buyer to show them homes, you really need to send them this contract. You all know we're supposed to send a consumer notice to everybody prior to prior to us engaging in any substantial discussion about real estate. We're really required to give them a consumer notice. Well, prior to you showing somebody houses or meeting them, technically, the way the law is written, they need to be under contract. They need to be given information as far as like what the transaction will cost them and how they can be represented and what their choices are, rather than what's happened in the past is somebody calls you and says, hey, so-and-so wants to buy a house. And you say, are they pre-approved? Yeah, I am. Can you send me the pre-approval? Yes, I can. Next thing you know, they email you a pre-approval and they text you 2 houses that you want to look at, and you're scheduling appointments for those 2 houses and you're meeting them. And that is what has happened in the past a lot. And what now it's got to be different. You cannot technically show a buyer a property without this contract. And this is what we really want. So I want to cover this with you mainly to discuss how the compensation works, because there are 2 I want to get out of this. Let me just see. So on every single deal, we want this section filled out in the agreement of sale. If you're a buyer or a seller agent, it doesn't matter. But the section is for compensation. So as part of the new agreement of sale, this is how we get paid right here. section 3. I don't know why it's under seller concessions where it should just be under, buyer broker fee, but its own thing. There's 2 items in here and people do get confused about this. One is for seller assist. The other one is for the broker fee. So I think we want to stop using this cooperating broker compensation form. There's no need for that anymore. If, when you are going to show a property, before you show the property, you need to call the listing agent and ask them specifically, what is the compensation? Are you offering compensation? And then it would be good for you to get that in a text message and save it so that you have proof of it in the event that there's a problem. But if you're submitting an offer and the listing agent tells you they're offering 3%, in this section, you're going to put 3% right here where I'm at. And now if they're not offering any compensation, then you would leave this blank, or you could put zeros in there. But when you fill out the buyer agency contract, you are saying to the buyer, look, for me to represent you, I am charging you this much. And that amount has to be listed in the buyer agency contract. And then this is where it's a little tricky, and we have to be able to discuss this with a buyer up front. They need this information before they even start looking at houses. We need to be able to tell them, as part of your offer, we can try to negotiate this compensation into the deal. And how we would do that is we would ask the seller to pay this fee on your behalf. And that is exactly what's happening. The buyer is paying us to be represented. So we are being hired by a buyer to represent them. We're entering into a contract with them. The contract is valid and enforceable, and they would have to honor it just like we would. And then any compensation that's given to us from a seller has to be listed here. And whatever compensation is here is then offset by whatever compensation we had in the agreement. So if in the buyer agency contract, we told them we were charging them 3%, and the seller is only paying 2.5%, then the buyer is responsible for 0.5%. Now, can you edit that? Yeah, change the contract then if you want. But you really don't have to. We just need to be upfront with the buyer agent at the time that we're talking to them. And the key points are, what are we charging? That has to be in the contract. And then we can negotiate with the seller for the seller to basically provide the buyer with a credit for that compensation, for them to pay us. So the buyer is still paying us, but they're negotiating a credit. You can see what it says. Seller will pay the following fee to broker for buyer on behalf of buyer at settlement. So they're paying a fee on behalf of the buyer because it is the buyer's fee. It is the buyer's responsibility. All right, so you see that in here. If that fee goes in here, we don't need a cooperating broker compensation form. Now, if you have a cooperating broker compensation form that says 3% and you don't put anything in here, and that form isn't signed by the seller's agent, technically, they're not obligated to pay you. Now, most people will, especially if you have it in writing somewhere, but we can eliminate that. Just put the fee in this section right here, separate from the seller assist. All right, now I want to go back to the buyer agency contract because I want you to see, and you can all read this. Like, you can read this contract. It shouldn't be, it's not See, this is what's going on with my computer. It's just it's just so much lag. It's not that tricky at all.
Dan, are you okay?
Yeah, it's just there's maybe, I got too much stuff open. I don't know. But the internet here has been lagging for the last week or so.
Do you want me to open it up and you can just tell what page to go to?
Nope, I got it.
Got it. Okay.
So the contract itself, like, just read it. And if you can email, like, we could share this contract with a buyer in Dotloop for them to review it. And that would be good too. But if you go through this, a lot of it is like boilerplate, like stuff like that's not, I don't want to say it's not important, but it's not like you need to get an attorney to give you legal advice. Okay. But you need to fill it out completely. Okay. And if you see, I filled this out completely. And look at what I wrote. Now we changed this, but broker's fee. I wrote, in a purchase transaction with seller represented by a real estate broker, the fee is 2%. With a seller which is not represented by a real estate broker, the fee is 2%. I didn't charge her anything else. No advance fee. So I told her up front, you're gonna pay me 2% of the sale price, and we can negotiate it into the deal, or we can leave it out of the deal. And in this case, we actually left it out of the deal. She paid me on the settlement sheet directly from her own proceeds because it was a competitive situation. There were multiple offers on the property, and she wanted to improve the strength of her offer by not having the seller be obligated to pay the buyer broker fee.
Right.
But you see, I have it in here, 2%. Then, you guys got to read the rest of this stuff. Like, it's simple, it's easy to understand. Somebody can, read this. There's 4 pages to this contract, but one of the pages is like a cover page. This is just a cover page, starting and ending date and the fee. That's it. And your information and their information. Right?
Dan,
yes.
It's important that so there's a blank spot, 2% of the purchase price, and then you continue whichever is greater, and then there's a spot to put an amount in there. That's where if they're going to charge a broker fee to cover the Liberty Bell transaction fee, it needs to go in there. And technically, if they don't put it in there, we're not supposed to charge it to the buyer at closing.
That's a good point, and I appreciate you saying that. In this transaction, this was like a referral from a family friend.
Right. I know that, but I'm just pointing out because agents aren't doing it. So.
And he's talking about right here, section B, 2B1A and B. It says and right there and right here. And we need to fill that out. You're right, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So anyway, first page is like more of a cover page. And the last page is really nothing unless you're going to add something. So there's 2 pages for you to kind of read and understand. And it's important that you do read it. But look up here. There's a starting date and an ending date. The longest you could do is 1 year. And I would do 1 year if you want. The only reason why I didn't do 1 year with this person is because this all happened like in one day, and I knew we were submitting an offer that day, and she had just gone to an open house, and then she told me she wanted to buy the property, and it was all happened very fast. So I knew if we made the deal happen, it was going to close before the end of the year, end of this year, which it did. So if you go through, I mean, let's just fly through this. If the buyer leases a property, what's your fee? A lot of times they're not interested in leasing, so you wouldn't put a fee there, but you can fill it out. So look at this. Even though broker's fee or a portion of it may be paid by a seller or a listing broker, broker will continue to represent the interest of the buyer. And then it talks about the compensation. So this explains what I just said in writing so that a buyer can read it. You can explain it to them, give them the short version, but they can read this. Look at E. Buyer understands and agrees that if broker receives less than the broker's fee agreed to in paragraph 2B, buyer will be responsible for paying the remainder of broker's fee.
Mhm.
Then you can read this in bold. Balance of broker's fee is earned if buyer enters into an agreement of sale during the term of his contract, whether brought about by broker or any other person. If buyer defaults on the terms of an agreement of sale, broker's fee will be paid by buyer to broker at that time. So, you know, this is a legally binding agreement. If the buyer enters into an agreement of sale for a property after the ending date of this contract, buyer will pay broker's fee if it's a result of broker's actions, the property was seen during the contract, or they're not under an exclusive buyer agency with another broker. So dual agency and designated agency, you can read that. You should know what that is anyway. Services to others. This is this boilerplate stuff. Entire contract, transfer of the contract, confidentiality. There's a thing in here about deposit money, which is important for them to read. You guys should know how that is, how it works. This is all boilerplate stuff. And a lot of it is covered in the agreement of sale. Anyway, like the inspections and the deposit money notice. There is even something in the agreement of sale for Megan's Law and the civil rights stuff. So, and recording of the property. None of that really needs to be in here. It's just boilerplate stuff. The main thing is on this page 2, and the term and the amount. So what we need to do is start to have these conversations with buyers prior to them looking at houses. And usually they don't want to do that. They say, hey, we want to buy a house. Can we go on Saturday? You could say yes, but before we go, I need this contract signed. And if they push back and say, oh, I don't want to sign anything, you could say, well, technically the law is before I can show you a house, I need to be under contract with you, even if it's only for one day. So you could do that. You could say, I'll sign a buyer agency contract with you for this one day or this one house. I don't recommend doing that, but technically, remember, they should not be engaging with you without you first disclosing to them what their rights are, what their fees will be, what your responsibilities are. All of that, and the way we do it, we don't need to really talk about it. Honestly, if you feel uncomfortable talking about it or you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Except, hey, I need you to sign something before we see the property. Because honestly, if they read this, they should be able to get the gist of it. They might have 1 or 2 or 3 questions. But honestly, if you just read it as a layperson who's never been involved, you're going to find out I'm paying for this service. Now, I may be able to negotiate the seller to compensate me for it, but I'm paying for it and I'm getting representation. They're getting something for the fee. So I want everybody to be on the same page. The buyer needs to be given this information. They need to be disclosed on what their rights are, what our obligations are, what the term of the contract is, and how much it costs. And then it needs to translate into, if you're putting an agreement of sale together, it needs to be included in the agreement of sale. So now the combination of this would be, I want you, can you see I'm in bright now? Scott, are you there?
I don't see the bright. I think you need to reshare your screen.
Oh, okay. So
just unshare, unless you're going to come, click on the sharing button and see if you can choose a different window. There you go.
all right, so we're going to do a separate class on this that I'll go through it with you, but this is a buyer closing cost estimate that when you get in here, there's a line that says commission paid by buyer. So if I want to go through this real quick, I could just say, let's say we were making an offer on this property right now. I think she paid $240. All right. She put 5% down. Janelle, you have a question?
Yeah, I can't unmute.
You can't unmute?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We don't see the commission form or whatever that you're saying. I just see the bright screen that says, the main screen. It says bright client search. You said you were showing a broker's. I don't know what you said.
Oh,
A buyer's
okay,
form.
hold on.
You got to go
Thank
to that
you.
window.
Thank you for saying that. How about now? Can you
Yeah.
see it now?
I can see it.
Okay, so this is, I'm used to Zoom, the way Zoom works. Okay, so you could see now, I'm going through the buyer closing cost estimate, and I just want to do this real quick. I don't know why it didn't adjust this. Whatever. Let's see. Okay. I don't know how to make this smaller. Well. I don't know what I just did. I can't. Boy, this is tricky, Scott.
What? What's tricky?
I can't access. Once I move the screen, I can't type in here anymore in my window.
Oh, you probably have. Oh, because you're trying to work in a different window.
No, I'm trying to hit preview on this.
Oh, and does it pop up in a new window?
No. Huh. Okay, can you still see it?
Yeah, I can, yes.
Okay, so we can't put that in until the electric is on in the building. I'm gonna call, that's what I wanted to do. So if you look, you can give them a buyer closing cost estimate. It did calculate the mortgage insurance, but look at this. See where it says commission right here? Paid by buyer, 5,000. And on this deal, that's exactly what happened. She made a payment of 5,000 at settlement. So this was included in her closing cost estimate. And look, it says she needed to bring $32,000 to closing, and her monthly payment would have been around $2,100. This was all part of the deal. And she knew it the whole time because it was inside of the contract that we signed. So you could do this with people. Let me just get back to dot loop. So you could see it's in here, which said 2%. The offer was 250. That's why it's 5,000. But I put the wrong number in there. But you can understand that this is what's going on. Now, although I did give this to her and asked her to read it, I explained it to her, what was going on, and she understood it. She never even read this. She knew me, and she, was referred to me. So she knew I wasn't trying to hurt her. We were trying to make the deal as strong as possible because she really wanted this house. And she understood what I was saying to her. Like the way that it was explained, she totally got it. That yes, I know I have to, basically the idea is this. The agents need to get paid. We cannot be working for nothing. Everybody is understanding of that. So for you to be compensated, the only real way to be compensated, the right way, the only way is for the buyer to be paying us. They're our client. So we're engaging in a transaction with them. We're signing a contract with them. We're representing them. We're placing their interest ahead of everybody else's. We're working on their behalf. There's no time schedule, by the way. It's not like you could say, I only work these hours. It doesn't really work like that. She was calling me at 9:30 at night. I was talking to her. I was talking to the other agent late at night. So there's no, we're basically committing our time to this person. We need to get compensated. Everybody's understanding of that. Now, how we get compensated was like this confusing way in the past. It's not anymore. The buyer pays us, period. That's it. That person is responsible for paying us. Now, they can get the money from whoever they want. If they want their mom or their dad or their cousin or somebody else to pay us, fine. If they want the seller to pay us or the seller's broker, fine. But they have to negotiate it. And we can help them, but it's not like anymore we say, oh, don't worry, you're not going to have to pay us. Those days are over. We're not ever supposed to say to a buyer, you don't have to pay us. You're not responsible for the fee. No, they are the only ones who can pay us. They are responsible for the fee. We can help them negotiate how to do it and maybe make it a little easier. And when we do we're going to do a class on listing presentations. I'm going to show you how you handle it with a seller on how to charge them. But this is the idea. It's very clean. It's not confusing anymore, although it can seem that way. Give this form to your client. Let them read it. You read it. And then they shouldn't have that many questions afterwards on how this works. And then at the end of the day, the main goal for the real estate community in the best interest of the public is that if a seller hires a real estate broker they have a contract that they're bound to. And if a buyer hires a real estate broker, they have a contract that they're bound to. And that is what we want. We want the consumer, the buyers and sellers, or tenants or landlords, to be represented, have full representation, and to be under contract. And we want them to understand the nature of the contract and the nature of the relationship. How long is the relationship for? How much money are they being charged? What are their rights? What are our obligations? All that needs to be put forward. And the reason why this is good, because in the past, it seemed like sellers were the only ones who enjoyed this type of relationship. And it was kind of a free fall. Buyers were able to see 2 properties with you one day, 4 properties with somebody else the next day, and it created all this confusion. Now the buyer needs to be under contract, and you, as a real estate agent, and I'm your supervisor in this position, you need to know you cannot be showing properties to somebody without this contract. All right, so I really would like it if we had some, if anybody had any questions. I mean, does everybody understand all of this?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, I do understand, but one, you said that the way you can negotiate with the buyer, but the way they pay for it doesn't matter. So if it's a cousin, a mom, or whatever, so they can get gifted the $5,000, and the bank won't have a problem with them getting gifted the $5,000 to pay for the closing. Is that correct? And is that on the HUD?
Well, what the lender's rules are is not, I didn't say it. I didn't say that. Like, I don't know what all the lenders might have different requirements for that. What I'm saying, what I was trying to do was make a point, is the buyer is paying us. Now, how they pay us, we don't really care. It needs to be on the settlement sheet, though, yes. So there needs to be a payment. Like when I represent a buyer on the settlement sheet, there needs to be that commission paid to Liberty Bell on the sheet. It either needs to be on the seller side if we negotiated the seller to pay it, or it needs to be on the buyer side if the buyer's paying it directly to us. What I was saying is, if they needed to get a gift from somebody, fine. They can get it. Now, the lender would need to approve that, I guess. But for FHA loans, you can get a gift. It needs to be from a family member. For conventional loans, you can get a gift too. So it depends on the specific lender and the lending guidelines for the program that they're in. I think they would be able to do that. But remember, if they're paying us a commission, then it's got to be on the settlement sheet. Like it's got to be, it's actually part of their closing cost. So when I showed you that closing cost thing, let me see if I can pull that back up. Janelle, you see this closing cost estimate?
Yes.
So I don't know what they're doing with the lender, but oh, wait.
Are we giving the lender a copy of this closing cost estimate or no?
No, but if the buyer is paying the fee directly to us, the lender is going to request the buyer agency contract.
Thanks.
And can I point something out, Dan?
Yes, go ahead.
If the seller is paying the compensation, it does not count as seller's assistant cap. So if they were getting 6% for an FHA and then they were getting 3% for the buyer's commission, that would be okay. But it has to be in the contract. It has to be in the agreement of sale that they're paying.
Yeah, in the agreement of sale, exactly.
Dan, can I point one thing out?
Yes.
So when they do the disclosure from the state, they also need to do the Bright disclosure, and the buyer needs to initial the top section. It's explaining how real estate agents get compensated. And remember, we did a training like a year ago with Bright, and they really, that has to be signed. They said they periodically might do audits to make sure that we have that document.
Who needs that? The lender?
No, Bright might request it. So it's in our dot loop. It's in there as a form to fill out. And it's got two sections. It has a top section where the buyer and seller initial, and then there's a second section that's only for the seller to initial. It just explains compensation and everything. And it's supposed to be signed before you show them a house.
And that's from Bright?
That is from Bright, yes. Remember, we did the training like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I remember. All right, so can you pull that form up, Scott, and show it to us now?
Yeah, hold on.
It's in dot loop?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing. I'd like
Okay.
everybody to see that.
All right.
Well, Scott's pulling it up. Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Clarify. Okay, so because you had the buyer pay for your commission, even if the seller was offering commission, it made your offer stronger because now the seller gets to save their $5,000 or whatever they were offering back to their bottom line, and then your offer stuck out more than the others. Is that correct?
Well, the net dollars to the seller ended up being a little higher because of her offer.
Okay.
She wasn't asking for the seller to compensate. They were offering 2.5% commission.
Okay, so I have it up, and it's, you're going to fill in the broker and your name, the client's name, the date. Then you're going to check, are they a seller or buyer? And then you put the address in. I would say you're going to put the address in, the buyer's current address. I don't know if you need to update it or if you're supposed to be putting the address of the house you're showing. I don't remember what that was, but I think you should just put the buyer's current address in. Obviously, for the seller, you're going to put the listing in. So you'll see the first section is all about how we get paid. And then there's a place for it to be initialed. So if you have a buyer's agency contract, your buyer is initialing here. If you have a seller's listing contract, then you're going to have your seller initial here. So you're not, like, if you're on the buyer side, the seller of that property is not initialing this form. It's just for you as a relationship with your client. So that client could be a seller or a buyer. The next section is only for the seller or the landlord. And there's a whole bunch of things that they're going to answer. It relates to the marketing of the property. I think in the lawsuit that Bright lost along with some of the other large, like Realtor.com and stuff, Realtors, NAR, they had to explain how properties are marketed. So, but anyway, so this needs to be done. So if you want to do it with the consumer notice before you take them out. And I guess if they refuse to initial it, and you can do this through dot loop, you would just, make a note somewhere that they refuse to initial it. And then the same thing when you're doing your listing contract, if it's a seller, you're going to send it as a document with the listing contract.
All right, does everybody understand that? Does anybody have any other questions? All right. Is Marie Hameen, are you in this meeting?
Yes, I am.
Okay, are you aware of the change in the brokerage where you have to register with the state for the new office?
No,
Yeah, I sent you an email yesterday.
you did.
When you registered for this, I had your email. I didn't have it before.
Mhm.
So I sent you an email. So look, it's in your,
On point.
yes, it's,
Okay.
I just sent it yesterday. Maybe it went into your spam, but it's really important that you go into PALS and transfer your, your, your office relationship to Liberty Bell Real Estate Brokerage LLC.
Okay.
Okay. And if you could do
Okay.
that as soon as possible, that would be great.
All right. Thank you.
All right. All right. If nobody else has any other questions, I think we can end the meeting. All right. Nope. You sure nobody has any other questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, Scott, thank you. Thanks for joining. We'll send you out an email next week. Or we're gonna do this again next Wednesday, I think, at 10 o'clock. And we'll I forget what we're doing next, but we'll send it out to everybody by Monday.
Yeah. Next Wednesday is a holiday. Is that going to be an issue?
Oh, it is an issue. I'm not going to be here. So the following Wednesday.
So which is the 1st of October.
Yes.
Okay.
Same time.
Okay.
All right, Scott, I'm going to call you in a little bit because
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.